in India itself in the next 5 to 10 years by NASSCOM. And also worldwide, there is probably more than 100 million jobs which are unfilled in cybersecurity field because there are not much expertise. Now, there is a very nice way to know what you need to do in cybersecurity. There is a publication, and as you are seeing that screen on your screen, you are seeing a picture, and this is the NICE framework. This is put out by the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, and they have done a very extensive, thorough survey and brainstorming to come up with what is it that the cybersecurity professionals do. And then, as you can see here, there are 7 boxes. Each box represents what they call a cybersecurity workforce category. And so I would suggest this is a document that is available on the web. It's called NIST 800-181. So if you get that document, it's a almost 200-page document, and it gives you a very great details about what cybersecurity workforce is supposed to be about and what are they supposed to do. So on top, at the very top, they actually divide the jobs into the 7 categories. And in this diagram, what you are seeing is actually a representation of the various functions that each of these job categories represent. So the job categories are security provision, oversee and govern, operate and maintain, analyze, protect and defend, collect and operate, and investigate, right? So these are the top level categories. And within each of this category, there are functional categories that are represented by these boxes under the top heading of the top level categories. Not only that, this document also tells you what are the tasks. So they have over 700-800 tasks that they have defined very minutely, that and then they map these tasks to these various different functionalities. So you will know exactly for what functional job, what kind of tasks you are required to perform. And then they also have a very extensive list of almost 1,000 knowledge categories. And these knowledge categories tells you what you need to know and what your skills should be that you should have in order to fulfill those tasks and therefore fulfill the functions required of you in these jobs. So I would certainly tell people that you should go and search for this document, and this is on top. It's written special publication 800-181, and you should start from there to understand. If you don't know anything about cybersecurity, this is where you should start. And of course, some of the stuff will not make sense in the beginning, but look at the knowledge set and then look at the mapping of the knowledge set to the different job functions. And then you go about look for how I can get this knowledge set. So certain jobs, like for example, provision has software development, like software development for security tools, as well as secure software development for other types of products. It also has system security, so how to actually architect a system that is secure. And then similarly, oversee and govern has management roles, various kinds of executive roles and management roles. Operate and maintain, for example, has a lot of the things about network administration, system administration, and how to make those things secure, how to do identity management, access management. Analyze is about threat analysis, exploitation analysis, how to know that your system is under threat and how to know that these threats are exploitable, what are the vulnerabilities. Protect and defend is actually how to protect the system and defend the system against ongoing attacks or attempted attacks. Collect and operate is all about operational, like how to operate, because you may have lots of tools and lots of workforce, but if you don't have an operational plan and operational, scheme, then you will not be able to affect the cybersecurity in your organization. And investigate is about, post incident investigation, like why it happened, how to prevent it in the future, forensics after a cyber crime happens. So this is in summary what these different job functions are. So I would say that if you are not familiar with the job functions, and if you're not familiar with work that cybersecurity professionals do, this document is very good, because there is a lot of misunderstanding among general public that cybersecurity means hacking. Now, hackers are actually cybersecurity professionals' nemesis, right? So they are not supposed to hack, and they hack into your system, and they actually find ways to exploit your system. On the other hand, we also do some hacking because we have to understand how the hackers behave and how the hackers find things. So we also know hacking, but it's like knowing to defend yourself rather than to actually hack. But so hacking is not cybersecurity. Hacking is actually, most of the time, it's a crime. But if it is not a crime and it is still being done, it is being done to actually understand the system's weaknesses and to protect our system. So I will stop here, and we'll go into more details as time comes.
Thank you, Sandeep, for a very nice introduction of cybersecurity work areas. And just to recap, you said there are 7 categories of work, 33 specialty areas, and 52 work roles. That's a lot. And cybersecurity being a very emerging field, it's natural that you won't have all the expertise today. So let's hear from the industry as to what is their view of these 52 work roles and 33 specialty areas. This is the theoretical, what is actually happening in practice. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to introduce Mr. Maninder Singh, who is the Corporate Vice President and Global Head of Cybersecurity and DRC Services at HCL Technologies. As you know, HCL Technologies is among the top 3 IT companies in the country with a turnover of almost $10 billion. Maninder has been in HCL for nearly 3 decades, and he's credited with a lot of several business innovations. So I would say he's one of the rising stars in HCL. And I think we will gain a lot from what he has to share in terms of what HCL is doing. So over to you, Maninder. I will invite you to make your opening statement.
Thank you, Rajiv, and thank you for that introduction. I mean, I want to stay humble there. I would like to start for our friends with a little bit of a story of the journey in cybersecurity really as a concept, and it used to be called IT security earlier, 22 years ago, when internet arrived in India. And I was very lucky to work with folks like Rajiv and some of our engineers at that time, building first security networks for some of the telecoms and banks in India. So this was around 96, 97. And security at that time, and I want to put the context of what Professor Shukla just introduced, why there are these 52 roles and this hierarchy there. It's very important to get the context of where we started 22 years ago and where we stand today. So at that time, if you were to secure, and I'm sure a lot of you who would have heard some of your seniors and maybe parents talk about, there used to be antivirus, right? So obviously the antivirus and anti-malware is there today. But if you had an antivirus, if you had a firewall, if you had an intrusion prevention system, and you had a method of securing and authenticating, whether it is Radius or TechAx, if some of these terms you have heard, that's it. That was cybersecurity. If you had put these 4 or 5 technologies in place, you were pretty much had a secure network, and predominant concern was securing at the network layer, at the data layer, right? Now, fast forward 22 years, I can tell you that if you have these 4 things, nothing is secure in your network or in your application landscape, right? Because the complexity of the landscape has so dramatically changed. And if we really look at it in the last 5 years specifically, and there were a spate of malware attacks in 2012 to 14, and then we saw 2016 to 18 period where you had WannaCry, NotPetya, and I think the word hacking looks very very appealing. It has the the cool effect which you see in Hollywood and Bollywood movies, but in reality, security is a very complex technical area. But if you really see what happened in these 2 years of heightened cyber activity and cyber threats, and we are seeing that in the COVID-19 pandemic again, the advent of complexity and proliferation of devices with all the smartphones all of us have, from devices which were in millions to billions today. So security of things has become an important topic. Most of the organizations are adopting cloud and digital journey, the cloud or hybrid cloud as a method of hosting applications in data centers is becoming prevalent. Shared SaaS applications, PaaS applications is becoming prevalent. And the whole digital journey and cloud journey has meant that complexity of IT landscape, be it in the enterprise space or what we use in the personal space, the amount of earlier what we used to call e-commerce, today is a very complex landscape of using all of the aggregator providers, SaaS providers, whether you use an Amazon or whether you use a Flipkart or whether you use a big basket. Because of the digital means of transacting in our daily life as an individual user or as a enterprise, we deal with a fairly heightened, exponentially increased IT landscape that cuts across network, data center, applications, our interconnectedness. So cybersecurity has become really complex because of all of this adoption that has went on in the last 5-6 years, more specifically. What are the top areas? So I want to elaborate from where Professor Sandeep defined the roles very clearly using the NIST framework or the NICE framework. Obviously, network security, cloud security, and risk and compliance around governance, risk and compliance, which is just to meet the regulatory requirements, remains the backbone in terms of the volume of skills and volume of the spend also. So network security, which is traditionally firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, antivirus, anti-malware, data loss prevention, all of these technologies really are the core, and there's a lot of capital expenditure and also maximum amount of build and operate skills rest here. The newly emerging areas, and that's what I just mentioned earlier, is the whole advent of too many interconnected devices, whether it is in the manufacturing or the individual space. All of our smart devices, whether it is in the smart home, our mobile devices, need securing. So the whole security of things or IoT security in manufacturing in interconnected devices is becoming important. So the new skills areas are IoT. And because of all the SaaS and PaaS we are consuming today, and that cloud is becoming predominant method of IT usage, it is also identity, which is now spans across multiple set of systems and data centers which we use. The identity has become a more complex. So whole identity management authentication is a new frontier in the cybersecurity domain, and data security. And you would have heard about it's everybody talks about data is the new oil. Even the biggest oil company or the biggest enterprise in our country, Reliance, their chairman says data is the new oil, right? So data security and really preventing the leakage of your data or pilferage of your data and your credentials has become, from an individual point of view and from an enterprise point of view, one of the most complex, challenging frontiers that is emerging. So these are some of the new age skills that are now required beyond the network security or data center security, which is in IoT and identity and data security that we are seeing. At the same time, security will also be using complex technologies like machine learning and artificial intelligence. We'll touch about that in further subsequent discussions. Because of the plethora of data points and data sources and log sources you have, the amount of data you have to manage in terms of handling cyber security has dramatically and exponentially gone up. So new techniques and tools using machine learning and AI will also become prevalent. So these are the three categories of skills in which we see skills emerging, and the expenditure going on with our new interconnected lives in this new digital world that is going to be paramount. So Rajiv, these will be my opening comments, and back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maninder. Very nicely you put about the historical perspective of cybersecurity from just a virus control software in your computer to where we have reached now. In fact, it's very difficult to imagine any device which does not have intelligence. Microprocessor is inside almost everything, right? including the engine of your car, or whether you have your printer or you have TV, everywhere there's intelligence. And wherever you have a microprocessor inside, you have a potential cybersecurity risk, and you got to protect it. And I like the statement, data is the new oil. And if data is the new oil, you got to protect it to the best of your abilities. So that's where cybersecurity definitely kicks in. So thank you, Mahinder. And I've been in industry and education for long enough time, and I can say that there's a gap between academics and industry. And there will always be, especially when the area is a very new area like cybersecurity. I mean, because academics will be doing research, finding new things and finding new perspectives. And the industry would be trying to bridge the skill gaps by training, by whatever else, so that you can make the people fit for the job which is required to be done. So this is where companies like Talent Sprint come in, and they play a major role in bridging this gap between academia and industry. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you Dr. Shantanu Paul. He is a managing director, CEO, and founder of Talent Sprint. Before he started this venture in 2009 or thereabout, he started his career with IBM Research Lab in the US, and he was CEO of Virtusa Software. He holds 2 US patents, and I would invite Dr. Shantanu Paul to make his opening statement.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. Wonderful, I think, initiative for you to organize this for the students and the participants of this hackathon. And thank you, of course, also to Professor Shukla and Mr. Maninder Singh for the introductory comments. So I'm going to take my journey a little bit applied in the way things have unfolded in my life, because I'll start with that and then connect the dots for you. For those who are on this session today, I see 398 participants. That's quite a remarkable attendance for all of you, and that's hopefully you're getting something out of this. So I give you 2 examples. Apart from my role in the US and then in India last 17 years in Virtusa, and now Talent Sprint last decade, where in Talent Sprint we have worked with about 250,000 or 2.5 lakh students and the working professionals, of which 50,000 have actually gone through our certification programs, which are very well regarded by top institutions. We work with IIT Kanpur also for cybersecurity programs. The interesting thing that I must tell you is that I also sit on the board of a company called NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India, which all of you who use UPI for digital payments probably know very well, because I'm sure in this audience, there's hardly a person today who's not using either Google Pay or Paytm or PhonePe. I'm assuming that's to be true. If you think about it, just to give a scale of where things have come, right? And I think both Maninder and Sandeep talked about this quite a bit, but let me give another concrete example of something very close to home. The Unified Payment Interface, UPI-based payments today, we have reached 1 billion transactions a month, that's a billion with a B, not an M, right? When this whole journey of UPI started after demonetization in December 2016, which was 4 years ago, in the first month, it was 1 million transactions a month. Today, 4 years later, that 1 million with an M has become 1 billion with a B. So that's a 1,000-fold increase in number of transactions per month. Now, where this whole UPI journey is now headed that we expect at NPCI is that in the next 3 years, this will become a 1 billion transactions a day. That's a 30-fold growth from where we are today, which is, in other words, almost every citizen of India doing 1 electronic transaction payment every day digitally would become the norm. And that is when we call it a citizen scale application. And this is very important to understand that when that kind of scale happens, cyber security, the amount of information flowing, the privacy, the protection, all of this becomes massive, right? And therefore, today, I think if there's one thing I can tell all of you who are attending is that, which is to further echo what has been said before, that there is probably never a better time to be in a field like cybersecurity, either to enter it or to reskill yourself to kind of be a part of it. So people like Maninder are driving this, Professor Shukla, they're teaching it. But I can tell you that from my experience in Talent Sprint, that this is a phenomenal time to be entering the cybersecurity field. So that's the good news. So what is the bad news, right? No good news comes without bad news. The bad news is the way we are going about things may actually be counterproductive. What do I mean by that, right? This is really the difference between learning a subject based on essentially learning topics and writing exams and clearing a certification. That is one kind of learning. But that is not the learning that is actually today going to get you into a professional top slot. What will get you into a professional top slot is the ability to do things with it. So I say that you get paid for doing, not for knowing. And why do I say that? In fact, if you go back to the NICE framework that Professor Shukla had up for the longest time, let me read out the words again, right? The categories. It says things like provision, it says oversee, govern, operate, maintain, analyze, protect, defend, collect, investigate. Now, if you are a student of the English language, you know these are all verbs and not nouns, right? If you look at today, when we talk about somebody being a master or a very skilled person, when industry looks at somebody and says, is this person skilled? They're asking questions about the verbs and not about the nouns. If you can go and talk about cybersecurity concepts and topics, and you can say things like cybercrime and cyber forensics, and you can talk about all the fancy words and concepts, and a lot of exams and certifications are driven around knowing concepts and terms and terminology, it is unfortunately not going to make you an expert. Expertise comes from mastering verbs and not mastering nouns. It's like saying, I know Java. A very typical Indian thinking, I say that I know Java. And the question that you really have to ask is, can you program in Java? People are going to reward us as professionals for the verbs that we control, not the nouns that we know. Right? This is very important to understand. And let me tell you a story around this because I like to cite this example a lot. I'm assuming that many of you are familiar. You have flown on a plane and you've been on a plane seat, and some of you have flown this wonderful airline that India has come up with called Indigo, right? And when you fly in Indigo, I call this the Indigo row 13 problem. So what is the Indigo row 13 problem? Those of you who know this, row 13 and row 12 are exit rows. Now, if you ever start an exit row in Indigo, the flight attendant will come to you just before the flight takes off and rattle off 10 procedures of what you should do in the case of an emergency, right? And all of us have flown often. I always ask this question that even after flowing 1,000 times or 100 times, all of us may know those procedures, but none of us are confident we can actually do it because we never had to do it. We never actually had a situation to use it. There was never a simulator where we learned to do it. So we could never apply this knowledge into practice. And I say that this is a perfect example of what is happening in cybersecurity. We might know what you have to do in an emergency, but doing it actually is very different. And knowing what to do is not enough to be able to do it when the time comes, right? So the important thing I want to keep emphasizing is that the bias towards action learning has to be important. We cannot anymore expect to become experts in any field, cybersecurity being obviously a prominent such field, without getting into hands-on learning and action-oriented learning. It's only when we learn by doing, only when we pick up the skills, which means verbs like the ones I just described from the NICE framework, that is when we become valuable. So I would strongly urge, because the Indian education system encourages a certain exam-taking skill, which is to say, oh, if I can answer these questions, I'm going to be an expert, I'm going to get 90% marks, and I'm going to be an A+. And I'm saying that that is a technique we have to start to abandon. We have to start to have a bias towards doing things. So any course you take, any program you take, apart from the certification value of the program, which I'm not discounting at all, I would strongly urge you to look at the curriculum and content and say, hey, if 50% of what I learn is not learning by doing, is not action learning, then that program won't get you to where you want to be as an expert, right? So I just close my comments here to say that expertise is a verb, expertise is not a noun. So certainly in cybersecurity, that is true. We have to develop a strong bias towards action learning. And the certificate should be a sweet reward and not the final goal, right? That should be a nice side effect outcome of getting a great certificate. But the real value industry will attribute is not to your certificate, but your ability to control the verbs. Thank you. And back to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Shantanu, for very interesting opening remarks. A couple of takeaways I have is that getting a certificate is not important. Getting hands-on experience is important. And therefore, and the certificate is important because that is what indicates to outsider that yes, you have done something. So my advice to all of you who are looking for certifications, please be careful when you look for certification. Figure out who is giving the certification and what is behind the certificate. Are you really getting some hands-on experience, or you are just getting a certificate? Just certificate is not important. I like your example of row 13 process. Clearly, cybersecurity is dealing with situations which you hope will never arise. And therefore, how do you learn yourself to deal with a situation which you are hoping will never arise. And it will be interesting to have some discussion on that as well. And there have been a couple of questions. So I've been looking at some of the questions, and one of the big questions coming from everyone, I think these are from the young people who are still doing in the college computer science or some engineering branch, as to what should they learn so that they can apply for a job in cybersecurity. If imagine they're in the fourth year, final year, so they have 2 more semesters to go, can they do something so that they are more fit for cybersecurity jobs? So I'd invite Professor Sandeep to make some comment as to, if they're still in college, what exactly should they do so that they are more appropriate for getting a job in cybersecurity area? And then I'll come to Maninder later on to ask, what does he hire when he hires from colleges? So Professor Sandeep, over to you. Sandeep, you got to unmute.
Yeah. My experience has been that 99% of colleges in India don't have a cybersecurity course that is worth anything. So they just teach, even if they have a cybersecurity course, it is very theoretical. It's probably cryptography and some concepts from network security. Therefore, getting a job from college is very difficult these days. However, there are some colleges which has cybersecurity specialization. I know that, for example, IIIT Allahabad has cybersecurity specialization for BTech. There is cybersecurity specialization in the University of Petroleum or some such thing in Dehradun. There is cybersecurity specialization is in Amity and a few other institutes. There is also a new cybersecurity BTech that is about to open in Amrita Vishwavidyapitam. The problem is that unless you do hands-on, unless your faculty actually is a cybersecurity researcher, he cannot really teach you cybersecurity because he's not doing it, he or she is not doing it hands-on. They have bookish knowledge. Bookish knowledge you can get by yourself, and that does not help you much in getting a job, or even if you get a job, to actually retain that job. So most jobs are probably going to hire you mostly in the regular track of programming and system analysts and things like that. And then gradually, as you get more and more experience, hands-on experience, you might be able to get in there. But I would say that if you are going to be in this field, this is a very hands-on field, as Shantanu has already very eloquently explained. I think that you need to know your programming. You need to be very good at programming, because without knowing programming, you cannot do cybersecurity, no matter what others tell you. So second thing is that don't fall for that I have CEH certificate and I have this OSCP certificate, or I have this whatever other certificate. Unless you have obtained it through a hands-on skill development, your certificate is invalid. It's basically an exam that you have passed, but you have not actually done anything that will that you can convince a recruiting manager that you know cybersecurity. So you may have, if you know what is happening in a TCP/IP, what may happen to a DNS server, or what may happen to password hashes if they're not salted. You know various kinds of things, but you don't know how to actually do cybersecurity. So therefore, I think that you can do an MTech in cybersecurity, or you can. So in IIT Kanpur, we have our undergrads can take up to 5 cybersecurity courses, which are extremely hands-on. Those are not many institutes have that. But if you are doing a cybersecurity course which is not very hands-on, which is very theoretically, somehow bookish, then it's not going to help you much. And I would say that plain BTech in computer science is better than that. And then all you have to do is that to learn programming, to learn computer architecture, to learn, network protocols and actually program network application programs, operating system, programming and operating system. These are the kind of computer architecture. These are the kind of things that you have to master. If you master these things, then on job you can very easily get into a part of a team and then gradually make your way into cybersecurity profession. So, and then MTech in cybersecurity are there in some places, including IIT Kanpur is planning to do a cybersecurity MTech very soon, although it has to be approved by the Senate. But there are a couple of other places, including Amrita, Vishavidyapitam, and other places that do MTech in cybersecurity. So you should, you probably can do that. But for that also your basic knowledge and basic practical knowledge that with which you can do, as Shantanu said, has to be there. Otherwise, you cannot really make a good career in cybersecurity. You might get in, but you won't be able to sustain or go up. Okay, so that I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sandeep. And I think the bad news coming from you is that there are not many colleges offering cybersecurity. And therefore, what does the industry do? Because the demand is now, here and now, and the supply supply side is not that great at the moment. So I would like to ask Maninder about what is his hiring strategy in today's situation, because you can't get very qualified people. So what do you take as input? And then I will go very quickly to Shantanu to ask him, is there a way where a college student can actually bridge the gap and be more productive for the industry? So Maninder, over to you. What do you hire when you hire from colleges?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rajiv. Thanks, Professor Shukla. So let me begin with breaking this into two parts. First is, where do we hire from? What do we hire? What skills are we looking at? And then really, what are the roles? It's important that we also kind of categorize this a little bit on the nature of the job you end up doing, and it's very important for us to understand. Our IT industry really boomed after Y2K, and we have come a long way in 20 years. And there is a lot of practical examples that can be put to table, which are contextual to cybersec, and we really can fulfill this demand supply gap. As Rajiv very rightly mentioned, today we have a huge demand supply gap. What we need as cybersecurity trained professionals for the nature of work we have in the industry today, especially globally, which Indian IT serves, and within India, which I think Shantanu gave some very good examples of our payment industry and the way our digital payments landscape is emerging. Uh, First of all, we look at graduates, science graduates, engineers for GET programs. And those graduate engineering training programs, we fundamentally really look at people who've got obviously some idea of software, some idea of coding, some idea of network security, etc. So conceptually, theory has been taught. I think Professor Shukla elaborated that very well. Unfortunately, as he also mentioned, there are very few who really have done some bit of one semester of cybersecurity and gone into a little more practical, conceptual experimentation with something like network security or application code, embedding app secure code into applications, etc. Right? So that's the challenge. But what we have done is we've also kind of really been working with a few universities to define at least one semester of cybersecurity curriculum, so that before they land with us at HCL or any of our other peers in the IT industry, they've done some bit of theoretical work at least. So we basically look at graduates, science graduates, engineering graduates as GET. We also hire MTechs, which have super specialization, and they kind of really enter at a higher level of role. And I will explain that in a bit. Uh, the third and most important thing is, and I would leave the more detailed potentially explanation to this with Mr. Shantanu later on, because he has the pedigree and expertise in that area. Like in the IT industry, the aptechs of the world and NITs of the world really fill that practical knowledge or training gap, which was there in our formal education system. There is still yet to emerge a more stronger ecosystem of these training institutes where certification is complemented with some practical lab experience. It cannot be practical job experience, but at least some practical lab experience. So I would potentially request Professor Shantanu to talk about it, how that is emerging and what students can do parallel to their formal education programs, right? Having said that, the roles which we look at, see, I would want to categorize the roles into 4 categories for the sake of simplicity and for a lot of our audience to understand, Rajiv. There are roles, and these roles not just for cybersecurity, but if I look at IT infrastructure management or some of the other application maintenance industry, there are tool-based analysis and responses, which means there is technology platforms developed. If you understand how to use that technology platform, you could do certain script based responses, and as your experience grows you can actually develop some skills where you can also respond to certain more complex situations. So looking at a tool and getting some kind of a monitoring alert and knowing what to do with monitoring alert, because the 80-20 rule will apply. 80% of the alerts will lead you to a certain set of defined actions. 20% may be more complex, and hence you need a little bit more experience to really get into the venture or venture into the undefined. So there is tool-based analysis and response that is there in cybersecurity when you do especially a monitoring or operations analysis kind of a role. Then there are scripting type of roles. You write scripts to kind of integrate and various subsystems to talk to one another. So Java, C++ scripting, Perl scripting, Python, etc. becomes a relevant skill. And there's a lot of work you can do by writing these scripts on top of already available tool to customize it for certain environments for the cybersecurity use cases. The third is system integration, which means there are a lot of technologies which need to be integrated together for a robust network security to be implemented, which means that you have to be day in and day out to train to implement those tools, exploit the features of the tool. Simplistic example is a lot of you would have heard about SAP and Oracle. SAP and Oracle is also a configuration item rather than just a development item. So understanding these configurations. The fourth is the real more complex, more challenging, and potentially a higher degree in your role hierarchy, which is basically business application understanding and then consulting, which is when you can look at a customer and tell a potential customer or a potential use case, hey, wait a minute, this is what you do, and I think these are the gaps in your security, and this is what could be a potential reason for a data breach or a larger hack or a ransomware attack, right? Now, for each of these roles, I think typically the start point is the tool-based analysis response, some type of a operations analyst role. That is where you can grow from, and then go to doing some bit of scripting-based integration, go to some system integration, understanding certain type of tools and products in more detail, and be able to configure them like an expert. All of these takes a little bit of years of hard work. I think Mr. Shandu very clearly said there is a certificate and then there is knowing the things, right? The knowing the things take a little bit of a harder grind. It's not that comes, on day one. And the fourth and last is moving to consulting. So typically the grad roles really will start at certain type of scripted response areas to give a broader understanding of cybersecurity operations, and then groom you for able get into a little bit of uncharted waters. And the second is when we hire MTechs, we typically bring them into a little bit of grooming them faster into either system integration or business analytics or consulting type of roles over a period of time. So Rajiv, that is where from an industry point of view, the way we look at entry level roles and how we kind of groom them over a period of time.
Thank you, Maninder. And there are a couple of questions, small ones. I will take it before I hand over to Shantanu for a couple of difficult ones. One is, do I have to be a computer science engineer to start in a company in cybersecurity? The answer is no. You just now heard from Maninder. The other question is, how should I prepare myself for cybersecurity? Of course, I think all the panelists have said what you should go about doing. The other thing, there's another question about which is the best university in India for learning cybersecurity. I think you got the answer, is IIT Kanpur without doubt, and that's why we're running this hackathon. Right? The next question is about, can this PowerPoint be put on the website? Yes, we will put the PowerPoint which Professor Sandeep shared on the website. You'll be able to have a look at it. Now, there are little difficult questions, and I want to go over to Shantanu on this one. This one question is about this gap between industry requirement and what is coming out from colleges. I think IIT Kanpur and a few other colleges may be an exception, but there are vast amount of engineering colleges which are giving computer science degrees and virtually no exposure to cybersecurity. So how should a student who is in the fourth year go about planning his future move in terms of getting ready for cybersecurity? That's one question. There's another one which is coming from a senior person, which is about 12, 15-year experience. And the question is, I'm in IT industry, I'm in certain field, can I move to cybersecurity? And if the answer is yes, how do I go about moving to cybersecurity? So two questions. For fresher from a average engineering college, or let's say non-cybersecurity engineering college, which is 99% of the colleges, what should I do? And second, for experienced professional, 10, 15 years, so what should they do if they want to make a career in cybersecurity, switch the career into cybersecurity? So over to you, Shantanu.
Thank you, Rajiv. So I think both are great questions, and I think there is hope for both of those categories. I think there is a way to navigate this problem. Let me try to explain. So if you are in a category of fresh or young BTech student about to graduate, soon to graduate, or just graduated, I think there are three fundamental ways in which you can look at this problem to address it, right? One is what I call the Eklavya method. The Eklavya method basically says that, the character of Eklavya in Mahabharata, right? So the Eklavya method basically says that, you got to if you have the enterprise, if you have the zeal, if you have the commitment and the belief, then you start off by getting your conceptual framework in place through some good self-study. And I think the examples that I think Maninder gave and Professor Shukla gave earlier on how you can go about it, I think that's plentiful. You can go to edX, you can go to Coursera, you can take a sort of meaningful course, which is maybe 3 months, 2 to 3 months, to get a basic foundation in place. And that won't give you hands-on, but will give you the conceptual framework of the space of cybersecurity and what are the different kinds of things that people do, right? So that requires self-motivation. And I think the most powerful tool of a cybersecurity expert will have to be self-motivation. So that is a test by itself, that can you pass the test of self-motivation to complete a serious program from Coursera or edX to start with. That's where I would start. Once you've done that, I think you're probably ready for a company like HCL. So I think Maninder explained quite clearly that if you come with a reasonable theoretical foundation and the standard aptitude and other communication skills that they will check for a company like HCL or any of the top 5, top 10 IT service companies, I think with the conceptual foundations, you probably have a good shot getting selected. And once you're selected a company like this, I think the first 2 years of learning will happen by the sheer dint of the fact that you're working for a top tier company, which is going to invest in your training, and you're going to get the shadow practice, you're going to get the actual deployment, all of that will happen. In 2 years' time, you'll actually be as good an expert as one can be. And this is the pathway I would recommend for people who are coming out of the colleges. So this is path one. The path two is the other extreme, which is to say that, look, do you really need to go into the workforce right now? If you have no compelling need to start earning right away, you may want to consider serious MTech, because one way to remediate the challenge of having a BTech from a place which is not on the top list of companies like HCL or others, you are actually going to cross that bridge and you're going to effectively remediate that disadvantage through a very good MTech. So your goal should then be to say, okay, I'm willing to invest some time and some money and 2 years of my life to become a real expert, right? So the thing about expertise is that it doesn't happen overnight, right? I think we all talked about the same thing, that, to idea that I can somehow crack it by doing it in very, very quick time. I think the idea of cracking it has to be abandoned. So you have to go down the path of saying, I'll invest some time of my life, 2 years, in a top tier school, put in the hard work to get selected. And then, I do the MTech in cybersecurity or information security. And then you come out and you have actually become very eligible for a company like someone like Maninder to look at you. It's the other extreme. So between these two extremes, I think there is a middle ground. The middle ground is still in early stage of formation. It's not fully developed. The example I like to give is the C3I IIT Kanpur Center, where Professor Shukla is a joint director, and Talent Sprint, which is our company. We have jointly created a program which is now running in for the last one cohort. And it's been a great story of how to learn experientially how to become a cybersecurity expert in about a 6 months' time, working part-time. In a model where you can continue to have a job and do this alongside. But again, if you think of it that way, these are not terribly cheap programs either, because the amount of time you spend on a program like that would be 6 months, in contrast to perhaps 2 years on an MTech. but the amount of money you spend will probably be substantial. It will still be, if not a full MTech worth of fees, it will be at least half an MTech worth of fees, right? So you can save time by spending money. So in 6 months, you can acquire expertise, perhaps quite significant for industry to take a serious look at you, but it will cost you some money, right? So this is the third option. And for this also, we have, we've taken young people coming out of college with high motivation, with proper selection into these programs. And I think one thing I'll tell you that if you demonstrate the right aptitude and the right attitude and the right motivation, I think there are plenty of people who will take you under their wing and give you an opportunity. The challenge is that if you want there's a funny statement I sometimes make that we all want to go to the moon, but we want to actually go there riding a bus. It'll never happen, right? You have to make the necessary preparation and investment to make that launch happen, right? So the point is that these are the three different paths that I can see for somebody who's starting. And to the final point, a second question that was asked by the gentleman, I think the program that C3 IIT Kanpur and Talent Sprint are currently offering in the 6-month part-time format is absolutely ideally suited for a working professional, provided you qualify under Professor Shukla's original recommendation that you have to be willing to be technically hands-on. There is no way to do this profession by being coding averse. So if you are saying that this is a management job, it isn't. And certainly we are not creating cybersecurity managers, we're creating cybersecurity experts. And therefore, but on the other hand, if you do have the technical desire to invest the time and the effort and have the willingness, I think the IIT Kanpur Talent Sprint program is perfect for working professionals, irrespective of years of experience, whether it's 5 years or 15 years, I think it's pretty much the right fit. Thank you, Rajiv. Back to you.
Thank you, Shantanu.
Rajiv,
Yes, Sandeep.
I want to address one question that I'm seeing here. One person is saying that Java programming I can do on my own sitting at home, but I cannot experience cybersecurity work sitting at home because what I can do is only protect my network. So I want to say that that is not correct, because there are lots of virtual machine-based systems on which you can actually hone all your skills. You don't have to go anywhere. You have to just look out for those freely available virtual machines which are vulnerable, on which you can do a lot of your experiments. So there is a plethora of resources that you can hone your skills on. And so don't be assuming that for cybersecurity you have to be in an infrastructure where you can protect that infrastructure. You can create virtual infrastructure and do all this stuff on your own.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of questions around the hackathon itself. So I would request Dabneesh to run around the hackathon in very quick 2 minutes. After that, we'll take questions from the audience, and to all the panelists, we may have to stretch it another 5-10 minutes beyond time. I hope it's okay with everyone, because there are a lot of questions and I would want to make sure that people get satisfied after the webinar. So Dabneesh, over to you, and then we'll take questions from the audience.
Thank you, Rajiv. So just continuing to the answer which Professor Sandeep Shukla gave, at your home, you can just try to participate in this hackathon first, and that could be your starting point as an introduction to cybersecurity. So just to tell everyone about the hackathon, we are organizing an cybersecurity hackathon, which is called SCL Hack IITK 2020. This hackathon, you can go to the website hackathon.iitk.ac.in, and you may know more about this particular hackathon. The hackathon has been organized by C3I Hub, which is the #1 cybersecurity center in India. It is located at IIT Kanpur. There are exciting prizes to be won in this particular hackathon. There are over 22 lakhs rupees of prizes which can be won. There are prizes for participants. There are prizes for startup. And then there are prizes for, so there are prizes till 25 winners which would be there. You could see more details on the website. Currently the hackathon is in a registration mode, so you could go to the website hackathon.iitk.ac.in and register for it. It is a team event, so you can have 2 or 3 people in your team. You could register, team leader can register himself first, and then he can invite his team members and form a team. The registrations are closing on 24th of July, and then there would be a qualifying round, which would be, so this hackathon consists of 3 rounds. The first round is the qualifying round, which will happen on 25th of July and 26th of July, and it's a MCQ and a programming. So you should know programming to participate in this hackathon. Then there are 2 more rounds, which is a challenge round 1 and challenge round 2. Here you would be given a cybersecurity problem, and you need to find a solution using the ML machine learning libraries. And everything will be provided to you, and you have to work on this solution and submit it on the platform itself. We have the results would be announced on 15th of August. It would be an online award function. We have quite eminent people in our jury, starting from Dr. Saurabh Srivastava and Professor Maninder Agrawal, who are both Padam Shri, and quite Saurabh is an entrepreneur, angel investor, and VC. Professor Maninder Agrawal is the director C3I. We have the other jury members are mix of the academic and the industry. We have Professor Sandeep Shukla, who is part of this panel too. We have Vinayak Godse, who is the DSCI Vice President. We have Representative Ranju and Ashish from HCL Technologies. We have Priya from IBM and Durga from AWS. These are our partners. HCL is the title sponsor, and DSCI and National Center of Excellence is our partner. Learning partner is Talent Sprint, and Shantanu is present here. We have gold sponsor in AWS and IBM, and the hosting institute is IIT Kanpur, and it has been organized by alumni IIT Kanpur Delhi chapter. You can find the webinar details. So this is all the webinar recordings and everything you can find here. So the people who want to try and learn and refresh your basic machine learning knowledge, there is our partner Talent Sprint is agreeing to have a course for them. It's a quick course. You can register for this particular workshop on the website, and this will be organized tomorrow. So you can go to the website hackathon.itk.ac, and then you can register for this particular workshop. There are detailed rules which you can find here. There is a demo for how you register for it. There's a how team leader does it and how he invite the team members. That can be done on the website. All the rules are here. If you have any questions, you can write it to hackathonitk@gmail.com. So this is about the hackathon. Now, as we have opened it for Q&A, participants can actually raise hand, and we can take few questions from them. So Rajiv, I'm taking few questions. You can decide who would answer. Let me just allow. So Nitin Kumar, you can unmute and ask your question, please. Nitin Kumar. Okay, it seems Nitin is not there. We'll move to the next one. We have Harshini Velpula. Harshini, you can unmute and ask your question. Harshini, can you hear us? Okay. It seems she is also not available, and raise the hand just for experiment. I'll move to so only the serious guys who want to ask question, please raise your hand. Rest of the people can actually lower it. If you don't have any question, please don't raise your hand. We have Mohit Tepola. Mohit, you have any question? You are allowed to talk now.
Yes, sir. I want to ask, sir. So in our college, in engineering, still 6 sem. we have not thought anything about the cybersecurity part. So
Mhm.
how am I what should be my approach to get into a field?
Okay. Sandeep, so you want to take it? He is in the 6th semester, and I think you want to know what can he do to start in it. I think this has been already answered, but it's still.
Your 6th semester means you are just like 20. So you have a lot of life in front of you. You have a lot of time. You can take your time. You can learn your basics first, or learn your operating system, scripting, Python, learn your C programming, learn your web design like JavaScript, PHP, and learn your basics and networking protocols, and then you get into cybersecurity. It will be much easier. If you neglect those and say I want to do cybersecurity, you will be in trouble later. So I would suggest that you, whatever is available, focus and master that, right? So don't worry about what is not available at your institute or whatever.
Okay. We have next is Jatin. Jatin, you are allowed to ask your question.
Yeah. Hello, sir. So actually,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, do we need to know machine learning in detail to participate in IIT Kanpur Hack event, or just the basic part is enough, sir? Because I am a mechanical engineer student.
Attend tomorrow's workshop. You will know what you need to know.
Right.
Yeah,
I think I would suggest you attend the workshop tomorrow so that you can refresh your knowledge and then you can participate in the hackathon.
Okay.
Jatin, I want to add something to what Sandeep said, and this is for everyone. You see, cybersecurity is a new field, and therefore the knowledge gaps are bound to be there, right? And the question, therefore, is how do you bridge that knowledge gap? And the one way is go to participate into wherever you get an opportunity of bridging that knowledge gap. This hackathon is one such thing, one such event. It gives you opportunity to know what you don't know. Today, the biggest problem on cybersecurity is people do not know what they don't know. And knowing what you don't know is in itself a big thing. So this cybersecurity will definitely tell you a part of what you don't know. And don't be afraid. New field means new opportunities, and therefore get into it, find out. Discovery is the best way to find out about new area. Next question, please.
Yeah, Rajiv,
Right. So next.
Rajiv, that is a very good point, because most people don't know what they don't know. Like I'm seeing a lot of questions on WCP, right? So WCP is offensive security certificate, right? So offensive security is just a part of cybersecurity. So one can actually get that certificate, and it has lots of hands-on activities, but that's not fully cybersecurity.
Okay. So next is Syed Mudassir Ali. Syed, you are allowed to talk and ask your question. Could you unmute and ask your question, please?
Hello, good evening,
Syed?
sir.
Yeah.
Hello, good evening, sir. So my question is, I have been solving rooms on TryHackMe, and I am doing basic CTFs. I've also managed a team on CTF time, and I am in first year right now. So am I going on the right track? Like I'm learning Python scripting and then shell scripting, bash scripting, and these things. So am I on the right track towards cybersecurity?
You sound like you are on the right track.
Yeah. Okay. So the next is Suraj. Suraj, you can ask your question. You can unmute and ask your question.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm currently in my final year right now. So I have a question. Like you told us to go for masters if we have the time in our hand. So which will be the better option, to study in India or abroad?
Well, just for a master's, it doesn't matter as long as it is in a good place in India, like IITs and stuff like that. You know, if you get a chance to go to like one of the good schools in the US or another country, that is also fine. So I wouldn't say that one is better over the other. I guess it's a choice. It's a person. I think it's a personal preference and choice. You know, that's what
Yeah, I would just add to what Sandeep said. It's not India or abroad. It's which is a good college for cybersecurity and which is not. I mean, many colleges in India may be outstanding in cybersecurity, and they will be much better than many colleges in the US or Europe in cybersecurity. So don't go by India abroad. That is not the equation you're dealing with. You're dealing with which one is good in cybersecurity, which one is not.
Right. I think that's the right way to say it. You have to figure out which colleges are offering things and enroll there. Okay. So next is
Sure.
Dhruval Jitesh.
In the interest of time, we can take maybe one or two more questions and then.
Yeah. So this is the last question. I think we are taking it from Dhruval Jitesh Bhai. You can unmute and ask your question. Dhruval?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is like the network security and cyber security. Are these two different lines, or is network security included in cyber security?
Included.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to just take a one-line closing statement from each of the panelists, starting from you, Sandeep, and Maninder and Shantanu. One or two lines. What is your closing statement, closing advice to all the people in the audience?
So for the uninitiated and young students, you should get your basics very concrete. So learn programming, learn scripting, learn your operating system, learn your networking, learn your basic computer organization, web application design, JavaScript. All these things, you will see that cybersecurity is an integration of many different technologies. It's not a separate field. Even machine learning, as you will see if you participate in the hackathon, that machine learning has a lot to do with contribute to cybersecurity. So get your basics first. Don't jump at that you don't have a cybersecurity course or you don't have this, that. Get your basics first, and if you have mastered that, and then you go into cybersecurity, you will be much better off.
Thank you, Sandeep. Maninder, over to you.
Thank you. Very well said, Professor Shukla. I think only one line. If you are in cybersecurity today, you are in the right field. That's the sunrise field today. I see a lot of questions around role, hierarchy, and money. Build the right talent, work very hard, money will find you.
Thank you, Maninder. Shantanu, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I appreciate all the comments by predecessors as well. I will just say that, if there was any doubt about cybersecurity being a great career, I think the pandemic has proven that it's even greater than you think, because the future of the workplace is fundamentally getting altered in a sort of unprecedented way, and we'll never go back to the old normal. People will work from home, they will work from on the road, there will be explosion of devices, explosion of connections, plethora of data. I mean, every conceivable manner you can think of. This is going to unleash a cyberstorm of data, connections, and connectivity and networking and devices. So I think for those of you who want to invest in this career, if you do it the right way with the right motivation and the right reasons, not because your friends want to do it, it's because you want to do it, that's actually going to make you a highly successful professional, because a rising tide is very good place to be for somebody in the early part of the career. So join the rising tide. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantanu. Thank you. I would like to thank all the panelists for being there today, and I hope the audience found this webinar useful. Just to conclude, cybersecurity is a sunrise field, like Maninder said. There are bound to be gaps between what the industry needs and what the colleges provide for, and that gaps have to be built by companies, organizations like Telesprint and others, and by yourself, learning by yourself. And if you sunrise industry or emerging field, the early adopters will gain a lot, because your career graph will just shoot up if you are adopting this early. So have confidence in yourself. If you're in cybersecurity, right area to be in. Don't be afraid of the gaps which are there, because they're bound to be there in any emerging field. So that's not scary. Be dedicated, learn, and early adopters will gain. Thank you very much for being there, and thank you all the panelists to be there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck to everybody.
In case of any question, hackathon, website.